Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, and my channel, Discerning What is True. And today is the 17th day of February 2023. And we're going to be talking through about a particular book that was done by Alvin and Heidi Toffler, Toffler, calling the book's title was Creating a New Civilization, The Politics of the Third Wave. This was a book that was written back in the 1990s. Usually in the late 90s. And this was to do with Newt Gingrich, his particular views, and eventually he sold out the Republican Party. And if you recall anything about what took place, is that he, in the 1990s, when they won the election and actually had a complete, Republicans had control of the House and Senate while Clinton was in office, and they decided to, he decided Newt Gingrich and Mr. Senator Arizona. And what took place was that they did something that I would say would be to the detriment of this country. And I'm trying to think of his name. I can't think of his name. He ran for president. I just can't think of his name. It's really frustrating, isn't it? But anyway, we'll get to it. And he just recently died, also from Senator Arizona. Anyway, the title of this particular chapter is called The Ultimate Substitute. And what he's talking about, anyone reading this page has an amazing skill called literacy. It comes as a shock sometimes to remember that all of us had ancestors who were illiterate, not stupid or ignorant, but invincibly illiterate. Not only illiterate, they were also innumerable, meaning they couldn't do the simplest arithmetic. Those few who could were deemed downright dangerous. A marvelous warning attributed to Augustine holds that Christians should stay away from people who could add or subtract. It was obvious that they had made a covenant with the devil. I don't know if I agree with that statement, but anyway, it wasn't until 1,000 years later that we find reckoning masters teaching pupils bound for commercial careers. What this underscores is that many of the simplest skills taken for granted in business today are the products of centuries and millennia of cumulative cultural development. Knowledge from China, from India, from the Arabs, from Phoenician traders, as well as from the West, is unrecognized part of the heritage relied on today by business executives all over the world. Successive generations have learned these skills, adapted them, transmitted them, and then slowly built on the results. All economic systems sit upon a knowledge base, you see. All business enterprise depends on the preexistence of the social construct resource. Unlike capital, labor, and land is usually neglected by economics and business executives when calculating the inputs needed for production. Yet this resource is now the most important of all. Today we are living through one of these exclamation points in history, where the entire structure of human knowledge is once again trembling with change as old barriers fall. Again, they're actually pushing this, you see. They're not, this doesn't happen by happenstance, folks. This is being pushed. We are not just accumulating more facts, just as we are now restructuring companies and whole economies. We are totally reorganizing the production and distribution of knowledge and the symbols used to communicate it. Maybe this is one of the things I would say back in the 1990s that I was involved in business. One of the things that came to my mind was simply just-in-time shipping. And that was the idea. Late 90s, it started being pushed, maybe in the mid 90s, I should say. And I knew even as a guy who was in his mid 30s, realized this is not a good idea. Simply because things don't always work. Things don't always, trains don't arrive on time. Planes don't fly off the first time. Issues that, have issues with safety. And what they were doing is simply a lot of these products were coming in what they call just in time. So what there was no warehouses to keep what we call spare parts, spare items. This is a way of actually cutting costs again by these gurus, in business. But it made no sense, except money sense, you see. And so what happened was simply is that we are seeing that even worse now than ever before. I talked to someone last night. It was an interesting conversation that someone's trying to get their vehicle fixed. And instead of actually ordering what we call the simplest part to fix it, which they didn't have. They decided to forego that and get a more expensive part so that they could charge the customer more in order to fix it. And they haven't yet fixed it. In other words, that part didn't work, you see. And this is what's going on. And it's being done on purpose, folks. It's being done on purpose. Similar to this right here, the Americans engineer decline. This has all been done on purpose. It's not coincidence, folks, at all. And this particular guy, Mr. Topher, Alvin Topher, is known for the third wave. He's written many books back in the 60s and 70s. Already, he's what we would call, probably has been given some knowledge, and he's been the spokesperson of this third wave for over 30 years, not longer. And what has transpired is that we're right now after the COVID deal, that this country doesn't produce anything anymore. The realization simply is we're no longer in control, folks. Our country is no longer in control. This was all a lie for basically what I call the large corporations. This is not family businesses, folks. This is large corporations. When I actually a couple months ago, I actually had my brakes repaired, and I bought the parts myself. And then what I did was simply had someone put them on for me. But it's interesting as I opened up the package to see it was made in China, not Japan, not here in America, but China. And the interesting thing I also realized about this whole issue was it was an American company. It's an American name company. So they had actually farmed out their work to be done in China. So let's continue on. What does this mean? It means that we are creating new networks of knowledge, linking concepts to one another in startling ways, building or amazing hierarchies of inference, sprawling new theories, hypotheses, and images based on novel assumptions, new languages, codes, and logic. Businesses, governments, and individuals are collecting and storing more shared data than in previous generations in history. Yeah, we have more what I call today red tape than ever before. That's my perspective on it. But most important, or more we should say, we are interrelating data in more ways, giving them context and thus forming them into information. And we are assembling chunks of information into larger and larger models of architecture of knowledge. Not all of this is new knowledge is correct, factual, or even explicit. Much knowledge, as the term is used here, is unspoken, consisting of assumptions piled atop assumptions, of fragmented, what we call models, of unnoticed analogs, and is included as not simply logical and seemingly unemotional information or data, but values, reports of passion and emotion, not to mention imagination and intuition. It is today's gigantic upheaval in the knowledge base of society, not computer hype or mere financial manipulation, that explains the rise of super symbology. Third wave economy, it's what it's called. The alchemy of information. Have you noticed that? It's just, it's just tons of information now. But the problem is how do you assimilate it? Many changes in society knowledge systems translate directly into business operation. This knowledge system is an even more pervasive part of every firm environment than the banking system, the political system, or the energy system. Apart from the fact that no business could open its doors if there was no language, culture, data, information, and knowledge. However, there is a deeper fact that all of the resources needed to create wealth, none is more versatile than knowledge. Take second wave mass production. As most smokestacks factories, it was inordinately expensive to change any product. It required highly paid tool and die makers. That's what I worked with. I worked with people who made machinery, parts, molds, that type of thing. That's what they are, machine shops. Highly paid tool and die makers, jig setters, and other specialists. These were specialists. They were it, and resulted in extended downtime during which the machines were idle and ate up capital, interest, and overhead. That's the whole idea, folks. When nothing's going on, like let's get an example for that railroad accident that took place in Ohio. This is why they really actually ran this thing in a hurry, because it's all about money. See, it's not about lives, you see. And I don't know what Norfolk Southern is going to do with this, because it's a big black eye, in my opinion. They fucked up. I just put out a video today that they already got the whole thing cleaned up, so to speak. They're running train. This is a main line for this area. The other thing I'm trying to figure out why. See, this is an issue I have with them with railroads. Okay, let me explain something here about railroads. Railroads today are like a smooth running machine. Everything works fine if everything's okay. Okay. But what's taking place simply is that don't have backup systems. They don't, folks. They have subcontractors who come in. They actually hire people who, this chemical spill that took place in this fire, everything that took place in Ohio, they hire people, what I call subcontractors. They come in there in a hurry. Whenever they call them, they're there. I mean, it might be 12 o'clock at night, and they're there within hours. And they're already there, and they go to work. And so this is the process. And, this railroad is based upon moving merchandise basically from the west to the east. And some of it moving back to the west. But we don't do that as much. What we send back out east, sometimes west, is usually empties, because a lot of the United States no longer produces things as it used to. So what's going on here simply is that the West Coast is inundated with seaports, and we're dependent upon China. And it's not just China, it's probably Taiwan, and probably less so than is Japan. And this is just-in-time type of thinking again. And so there was a complaint by ADM, which is a major grain operator and product they make also. And they were complaining about the railroad simply not getting their products where they needed to be. That was put out about 5 or 6 months ago. Some pretty angry notes that came from a particular guy speaking out about it. He was very angry. I think he's the president of ADM. Anyway, what's transpiring is that we are so dependent in this country, and we don't make anything anymore. So we're not self-sufficient anymore. We don't make our own clothes anymore. We don't make our own shoes anymore. We don't even make our own clothes with our jeans and everything. That used to be made here locally at one time. We don't make these shirts. We don't make glasses. These glasses are made somewhere else, and then they're cut a certain way here in the United States. That's it. The frame is made in China. This frame of this glass is made in China. So it probably didn't cost them to do this, maybe $10, maybe not even that much. The whole frame, everything. Now the glasses are a different ball game. That's an expert has to do that. But all this didn't cost no more than $10. That includes the shipping. Everything is included with all this, you see. So this is what they're talking about. So this is the third wave. This is the elimination of the nation state. This is what this is all about. This is what this is all about. What I've been talking to you about. And the United States is involved also with working with Mexico and Canada. You see, in the European deal, the ECM, the European Common Market, the same thing. Anyway, I'm kind of getting off track here, but I just want to explain to you what is going on. So they've got everything cleaned up, supposedly, that is there in that East Palestinian town in Ohio, but they haven't cleaned up everything. They still got to clean up the water. All that's still got to be done, but they're already running trains through that area. So that tells me something really critical, that they've cut there's no backup plan. That's how these railroads now run. They don't have a backup plan. They don't run if they have an issue like this, they don't take that train back, another train behind it, and move it backwards and get on another particular track and go onto what I call get the product to either Chicago or wherever it has to go, or out west. A lot of these main lines, if you saw that track I shared here in the video earlier on Facebook, This is a multi-line. It's two lines. There's two. One could be going east and one could be going west, or two could be going east and two could be going west, depending on whatever they set it up for. But it tells you simply they're in a precarious position. Now, did the government create this? This is something I think about too. So what is happening simply is with that whole issue and explaining this whole thing here in the book is that the railroads pay taxes on that rail. You see, they pay a certain type of property tax. And what happens when they don't feel that that line is no longer productive in some ways, they sell it or they destroy it. And I have a railroad map here of the southeast of the United States. Very clearly shows that, we have cut here in South Carolina over 50%, if not more, in the last 50 years. The track is gone. Companies that no longer exist because they've been bought out. You see. Okay, so let's just, this again is part of this just in time. All this stuff that thinks it's really radically great. Everything's dependent upon the computer also. So if the computer systems that don't work, when I went back to take a can of food that I picked up by accident at Walmart, they couldn't serve me and help me because their computers are down. Even though I had a cash ticket in a hand, people are now no longer, let me explain this, cannot do it mechanically. It's got to be entered in somehow the computer system somehow. So it was down that morning when I went there. So this is how dependent we are in so many phases of our lives. And also, people don't know how to do this anymore the old way. They don't either write something down by hand, which they could, but they don't want to do that. I went to 2 or 3 people. I actually went to the manager, not the main manager, but another procurement manager of the store, and talked to him. Well, if it's down, it's down. You see, this is excuses that people give because they're not interested in making me happy, even though I may have made a mistake, but I don't think I did, because when I picked up the beans that I was wanting, which was black beans, it was in the black beans section. So I picked up one, had black beans, so I assumed the next one was black beans, and it wasn't. It was navel beans, and I don't want navel beans, you see. But I'm just explaining how this whole apparatus is dangerous because of the computer systems down, which if you don't have any electricity running anything with these computers, you don't have any way of doing anything. You see. But the new technology stands second wave theories on their heads. Instead of mass production, we are moving towards demassified production. The result is an explosion of customized and semi-customized products and services. The latest computer-driven machinery manufacturing technologies make endless variety possible and inexpensive. Yeah, it makes it inexpensive. I realize that. New information technologies, in fact, push the cost of diversity towards zero and reduce the once vital economies of scale. Or take materials, a smart computer program hitched to a lathe. This is talking about stuff I'm involved with. This is what they call a CNC machine, computerized numerical control. A small computer program hitched to a lathe can cut more pieces out of the same amount of steel than most human operators. This is already set up that way. Be set up in a program, set it up, get the most out of that piece of steel. When the other way would be pieces that had been scrapped. I understand what they're saying. Out of the same amount of steel than most human operators. Now, the key is simple, is in a CNC tool, it's also automated. Once you program it, you can step away and be doing something else if someone's there with an operator. But the operator here is just an operator. He doesn't know how to fix anything, folks. You see, he doesn't know how to fix anything. So when it goes down, he's down himself. He's not doing anything. Think about it. Making miniaturization possible, new knowledge leads to smaller, lighter products, which in turn cuts down on warehousing and transportation. Up-to-the-minute tracking of shipments, i.e. better information, means further transportation savings. New knowledge also leads to the creation of totally new materials ranging from aircraft compositions to biological, increasing our ability to substitute one material for another. Deeper knowledge now permits us to customize materials at the molecular level to produce desired thermal, electrical, or mechanical characteristics. The only reason we ship huge amounts of raw materials like bauxite or nickel or copper across the planet is that we lack the knowledge to convert local materials into usable substitutes. Now, the reason why we send those things far off, folks, is because of cheap labor. Okay? Disagree with him. Once we acquire that know-how, further drastic savings and transportation results. Sorry, I got on the wrong tangent here. So the same goes for energy. Nothing illustrates the substitutability of knowledge for other resources better than the recent breakthroughs of superconductivity, which at the minimum will drive down the amount of energy that now must be transmitted for each unit of output. In addition to substituting for materials, transportation, and energy, knowledge also saves time. Time itself is one of the most important of economic resources, even though it shows up nowhere on a second-wave company balance sheet. Time remains, in effect, a hidden input, especially when change accelerates. The ability to shorten time, for instance, by communicating swiftly or by bringing new products to market faster, can be the difference between profit and loss. New knowledge speeds things up, drives us towards a real time, instantaneous economy, a substitution for time. Space, too, is concerned and conquered by knowledge. GE's Transportation System division builds locomotives, the only major locomotive company now in the United States. They make locomotives that are now over 6,000 horsepower. That was unbelievable even 30 years ago, folks. Most were around 4,000. That's why they're running longer trains, too. I don't agree with that, but they are doing this all because of time. They're cutting their costs to the minimum, folks. The problem is that you take a chance on safety on all that. You see. Space, too, is conserved and conquered by knowledge. GE's Transportation System develops locomotives. When it began using advanced information processing and communication to link up with its suppliers, it was able to turn over its inventory 12 times faster than before and to save a full acre of a warehouse space. Yeah, it saves a full acre, but the problem is simply when something goes wrong, you don't have the parts, so the whole thing's down. Okay. Not only minimize products and reduce warehousing, but other savings are possible. Advanced information technology includes document scanning and new telecommunication capacity based on computers and advanced knowledge. Make it possible to disperse production out of high-cost urban centers and to reduce energy and transport costs even further. Knowledge versus capital, the section here. So much is written about the substitution of computerized equipment for human labor that we offer ignore the ways in which it also substitutes for capital. Indeed, in a sense, knowledge is far greater long-term threat to the power of finance than our organized labor or anti-capitalist political parties. Relatively speaking, the information revolution is reducing the need for capital per unit of output in a capitalist economy. Nothing could be more revolutionary. Vittorio Maralloni is a 61-year-old Italian businessman. 10% of all his washing machines, refrigerators, and other major household appliances sold in Europe are made by Maralloni's company. His main competitions are Electrolux of Sweden and Philips of Holland. According to Maralloni, we need less capital now to do the same thing that requires more capital in the past. This means that a poor country can be much better off today with the same amount of capital than 5 or 10 years ago. The reason, he says, is that knowledge-based technologies are reducing the capital needed to produce dishwashers, stoves, or vacuum cleaners. Begin with information substitute for high-cost inventory, according to Maralloni. By speeding the responsiveness of the factory to the market and making short runs economically better and more instantaneous, information makes it possible to reduce the amount of components and finishing goods sitting in warehouses or railroad sidings. Maralloni at one point cut a startling 60% from his inventory costs. Yeah, you can cut it. I understand that point. That's not the point here, though. See, he's not dealing with. If the system fails in one part or the other, everything stops. Maralloni's case has been duplicated by every major company in the United States, Japan, and Germany at just-in-time delivery. That's what I'm talking about. or parts based on computerized information. It slashes inventory everywhere. Yes, it slashes. I understand that part too. But when you can't get it, their company's main lines, you can't produce anything. It's all or nothing. It's 100% or zero. Cuts in inventories, of course, not only translate back into smaller space and real estate costs mentioned earlier, but it also reduces taxes, insurance, and overhead. Even though the initial cost of computers, software information, and telecommunications may itself be high, Marilonas says the overall savings means that his company needs less capital to do the same job it did in the past. Michael Milliken, who far better or worse knows a thing or two about investment, has summed it up in 6 words. Human capital has replaced dollar capital because it reduces the need for raw materials, labor, time, space, and capital and other inputs. Knowledge becomes the ultimate substitute, the central resource of an advanced economy, and as this happens, its value soars. So that's the conclusion of chapter 3 of this particular book, The Politics of the Third Way. So we'll get back into something else here in a second. Again, I understand what he's saying here. I understand the point. So it cuts costs. Yes, it cuts costs. But it also means that your products are made in China and your other things are made elsewhere. So it's all a cost. You're saving, yes, you're saving time and such. But once the link is broken, say the railroad train is in trouble, like this one happened here in Pennsylvania, Ohio. And what if you, quote unquote, have an issue with shipping it from China to here? Where's the backup? There's no backup, you see. So we could do, that's just my point, because I've been involved with this. And my thing was this: we dealt with something which was, we kept our inventory at our business, because my perspective is with my dad, how he taught me certain things, that if you had one thing, and you can always do this seriously, this is based upon a little small business. If you had one in stock and someone needed it, you sold it. That's how it worked. Okay? Because they needed it for production. I knew that in industry and how it worked simply that way. But once you had zero and a man comes in there and he needs something, you can't sell it. You see. So yes, there's inventory costs. I understand what he's saying. But we worked on that way simply is to keep it simple, stupid. In other words, all it takes is, certain products, all you have to have is one, you see. And if you had one in stock, you always simply could reorder, you see, in the packs. Now, that's a different story now. And I talked with my friend a year ago, or less than that, when he closed his store up, his health deal. He couldn't depend upon the people in the warehouse because they were lying to him. They weren't even honest with him. And that's the problem with what I call people these days. They'll tell you anything, and the people who bought these corporations don't care. A lot of these companies are involved in healthcare, whatever. They've already got plenty of money already out there, okay? But they buy it to keep from other people from having it, for them to have it, in order for them, in case something goes wrong, they don't worry about it. You see, they don't care. Do you understand? It's them buying up everything, so eventually when something goes wrong, it's not bothering them, because it's not their meat that puts on the table, because they own everything else around the whole world. That's the difference. It's not like me and you trying to start a business, you see. It's the only business we got. So we fail or fuck up, then it's our own fault, you see, but not with these other people, you see. Anyway, thank you for listening, and you have a good day. Take care.